The vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly before the ESS Hyperion as it glided through the Carina sector, its sleek hull reflecting the distant starlight. To the untrained eye, the vessel might have appeared unremarkable. A modestly sized exploration ship bearing the markings of the Earth Space Command. Its worn exterior and seemingly conventional design suggested nothing more than a routine scientific mission. Captain Sarah Foster stood at the bridge's observation window, her weathered hands clasped behind her back as she studied the starfield ahead. 20 years of deep space exploration had taught her that appearances were often deceiving, a lesson the rest of the galaxy had yet to learn about humanity. "Captain, multiple contacts emerging from fold space," Lieutenant Chen announced from his sensor station, his voice carrying the practiced calm of a veteran officer. "Readings suggest a battle fleet. Configuration unknown." Foster's expression remained neutral as she turned to face the holographic display materializing in the bridge's center. A massive array of warships had appeared, their crystalline hulls catching the light of the nearby sun and fracturing it into rainbow patterns. The vessels arranged themselves in an attack formation that spoke of centuries of military tradition. Opening communication channels, Communications Officer Rodriguez reported. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies." The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a towering figure whose very presence seemed to demand submission. Grand Marshal Kylax of the Hegemony stood before them, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming with ceremonial markings that spoke of countless victories. Unidentified vessel. Kylax's translated voice resonated through the bridge. "You have entered restricted hegemony space. Your primitive craft is unsuited for these waters. Submit to boarding and inspection, or face immediate destruction." Foster allowed herself a small smile. "This is Captain Sarah Foster of the Earth Space Command vessel Hyperion. Our charts mark this as neutral territory under the Galactic Concordat. We're conducting authorized research missions." The alien commander's secondary appendages twitched in what Foster recognized as amusement. Earth Space Command. Ah, yes, the upstart species that barely managed to achieve basic interstellar travel. Your presence here is amusing, but the hegemony does not recognize your claimed rights to this sector. The bridge crew maintained their positions, each officer focused on their tasks with practiced precision. Foster could feel their tension. Not from fear, but from the anticipation of what was to come. "I must insist that you withdraw your fleet, Grand Marshal," Foster replied, her voice carrying an edge of steel beneath its diplomatic tone. "We have no wish for conflict, but we will defend ourselves if necessary." Laughter erupted from the alien command crew visible behind Kylax. The Grand Marshal himself made a dismissive gesture with his primary manipulators. "Defend yourselves. Your vessel is outmatched 1,000 to 1. Our smallest support ship carries enough firepower to reduce your entire craft to its constituent atoms." Foster exchanged a glance with her tactical officer, Commander James Chen, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. The Hyperion systems were ready, though nothing on their exterior betrayed this fact. "Last warning, Grand Marshal," Foster stated firmly. "The consequences of your actions will be your responsibility alone." "Enough of this farce," Kylax snarled. "Your species' arrogance exceeds your capabilities. Perhaps a demonstration is in order." He turned to his weapons officer. "Target their propulsion systems. Let's show them the folly of challenging the hegemony." The massive alien fleet began to move, their formation tightening as weapon systems charged. Energy readings spiked across the Hyperion's sensor displays as targeting locks attempted to establish themselves on the human vessel. Foster squared her shoulders and pressed a small control on her command chair. Throughout the ship, systems that had laid dormant began to awaken. The worn exterior plates that had seemed so primitive began to shift almost imperceptibly, molecular restructuring already underway beneath the surface. "Very well," Foster said quietly, more to her crew than to the alien commander. "Initiate Protocol Omega. Let's show them what humanity has learned about necessity being the mother of invention." The first salvos from the hegemony fleet lanced out across space, beautiful, deadly streams of energy that could vaporize conventional ships in seconds. They struck the Hyperion's hull precisely where Kylax's gunners had aimed. And nothing happened. The confusion on the alien commander's face was visible even across species barriers. "Impossible," he muttered. "Fire again. Full power." But as the hegemony fleet prepared for another assault, the Hyperion began to change. What had appeared to be simple hull plating began to flow like liquid metal, reforming and restructuring itself. Hidden weapons ports emerged from seemingly solid surfaces, and energy signatures that had been completely masked suddenly flared to life. The last thing Grand Marshal Kylax saw before the communication cut out was Captain Foster's calm smile. The same expression worn by countless human commanders throughout history when their opponents had fatally underestimated them. The battle for the Carina sector was about to begin, and humanity's mask of technological inferiority was finally ready to fall. The bridge of the Hegemony flagship erupted into chaos as the first sensor readings came flooding in. Grand Marshal Kylax's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation his subordinates had rarely witnessed. "Impossible," he hissed, watching as the seemingly primitive human vessel continued its transformation. The Hyperion's hull now rippled like liquid mercury, its surface constantly shifting and adapting. What had appeared to be battle scars and wear from space travel were revealing themselves as incredibly sophisticated metamorphic plates. "Status report," Kylax demanded, his secondary appendages twitching violently. His science officer's voice trembled. "The human vessel. It's utilizing technology we've never encountered. The hull appears to be composed of self-replicating nanomaterials that can reconfigure at will. Our weapons can't maintain a lock because the target profile keeps changing." Aboard the Hyperion, Captain Foster watched the alien fleet's formation with the calculated patience of a predator. The ship's transformation was nearly complete, its true form emerging like a butterfly from its chrysalis. What had appeared to be a simple research vessel now bristled with advanced weapon systems that had been perfectly concealed beneath its adaptive camouflage. "All systems operational, Captain," Commander Chen reported. "Quantum shield grid at full power. Metamorphic arsenal ready for deployment." Foster nodded, her eyes never leaving the tactical display. "Send the encrypted broadcast to all Hegemony vessels. Let's give them one last chance to withdraw." The message that appeared on every Hegemony ship's command screen was simple. "The appearance of weakness is humanity's greatest strength. Withdraw now." Kylax's rage overwhelmed his judgment. "All ships, open fire. Full barrage. Destroy that arrogant human vessel." The space between the fleets erupted in a dazzling display of energy weapons and projectiles. The Hegemony's attack was magnificent in its coordination and power, enough firepower to destroy a small moon. But as the barrage approached the Hyperion, something extraordinary happened. The human ship's quantum shield grid activated, but not in the way conventional shields worked. Instead of simply absorbing or deflecting the attacks, it caught them, transformed them, and redirected their energy. Each point of impact became a nexus of swirling, controlled chaos. "Energy conversion successful," the Hyperion's AI announced calmly. "Attack power absorbed and redistributed to weapon systems. Efficiency rating, 94.3%. Foster allowed herself a grim smile. "Return the favor, Commander Chen. Show them what we've learned from a millennium of warfare on Earth." The Hyperion's response was devastating in its precision. Weapons that had been disguised as simple sensor arrays came to life, each one targeting a specific weakness in the Hegemony vessel's defenses, weaknesses that had been analyzed and cataloged during the initial scans while the aliens were busy mocking the human ship. First, a series of quantum-entangled projectiles bypassed the Hegemony shields completely, appearing inside their ship's engine rooms through micro-wormholes. Several support vessels immediately lost power, their crews scrambling to understand what had happened. Next came the temporal disruptors, weapons that local spacetime itself, causing sections of the Hegemony fleet to experience time at different rates. Ships that tried to maintain formation found themselves seconds or minutes out of sync with their squadrons, their carefully coordinated attacks falling into disarray. Impossible. Kylax roared as reports of failing systems cascaded across his command screens. They're primitives. We've ruled the stars for millennia. And that's precisely your weakness. Foster's voice came through on all channels, calm and almost instructional. You stopped innovating. You stopped adapting. Humanity had to fight for every step into space, against our own nature, against our harsh world, against physics itself. We never had the luxury of complacency. The Hyperion's hull continued to shift and adapt, each configuration perfectly suited to its next attack. Weapons appeared and disappeared, armor thickened and thinned, and energy fields danced across its surface in patterns that defied conventional military doctrine. Your greatest mistake, Foster continued, was assuming that because we didn't show our strength, we didn't possess it. Humanity learned long ago that survival often depends on being underestimated. As if to emphasize her point, the Hyperion executed a maneuver that should have been impossible for a vessel its size. It seemed to fold space around itself, appearing simultaneously at multiple points in the battlefield. The hegemony's targeting systems couldn't determine which image was real, because in a sense, they all were. Quantum superposition drive functioning within parameters, the AI reported. Multiple spatial manifestations stable at 89% efficiency. Foster watched as the mighty hegemony fleet, pride of 1,000 conquered systems, began to break formation. Some ships were already turning to flee, their commanders finally understanding the true nature of their opponent. Others continued to fight, their attacks growing more desperate and uncoordinated. Final warning, Foster broadcast. The next phase of our response will not be reversible. Withdraw your forces, and the Earth Space Command will be willing to discuss proper territorial boundaries through diplomatic channels. In the silence that followed, the galaxy's balance of power hung in the balance, and the true face of humanity's technological prowess was finally revealed to the stars. Grand Marshal Kylax's flagship shuddered as another volley of the Hyperion's weapons found their mark. Around him, the pride of the hegemony fleet was in disarray, their formation shattered by weapons they couldn't understand and defenses they couldn't penetrate. Fall back to secondary positions, he ordered, his voice hoarse with rage and disbelief. Concentrate all fire on their propulsion systems. But the Hyperion was everywhere and nowhere at once. Its quantum superposition drive allowed it to exist in multiple combat states simultaneously, making conventional targeting impossible. What appeared to be the ship's engines one moment would transform into heavily armored plating the next, while weapon emplacements emerged from previously smooth hull sections. Captain Foster stood at her command station, watching the tactical display with practiced calm. Status of the neural net tactical system. The AI has successfully mapped their command structure and battle doctrine. Commander Chen reported. We're predicting their movements with 97% accuracy. They're still fighting according to strategies that haven't changed in centuries. Foster nodded. This was humanity's true advantage, not just their advanced technology, but their ability to adapt and evolve their tactics in real time. The Hyperion's artificial intelligence wasn't just predicting the enemy's moves. It was learning from them, evolving its responses with each exchange. Multiple ships attempting to enter fold space, Captain, Lieutenant Rodriguez announced from his station. They're trying to retreat. Deploy the quantum anchors, Foster ordered. Let's show them another of our surprises. From the Hyperion's metamorphic hull emerged what appeared to be simple probes. They shot out in all directions, their energy signatures barely registering on conventional sensors. As they reached their designated positions, they activated, creating a complex web of quantum-entangled fields that made fold space travel impossible within the battle zone. On the Hegemony flagship, alarms blared as their fold space drives failed to engage. What sorcery is this? Kylax demanded, his ceremonial armor now scuffed and damaged from the bridge's violent shaking. Unknown technology, sir, his science officer reported, mandibles clicking in distress. They've somehow created a localized distortion that's preventing fold space formation. We're trapped. Foster's voice came through their communications again, still maddeningly calm. Your ships are now confined to normal space, Grand Marshal. The quantum anchors will remain active until we've concluded our business here. As if to demonstrate their complete control of the battlefield, the Hyperion began a new series of attacks. This time, precision strikes targeted the hegemony ship's command and control systems. Microscopic wormholes opened inside their computer cores, introducing targeted quantum viruses that began rewriting their operating systems. We're losing control of our secondary systems, Kylax's tactical officer reported, panic evident in his voice. Weapons are going offline. Shield generators are cycling down. It's like they're inside our networks. Impossible, Kylax roared. Our cybernetic defenses are impenetrable. We've developed them over thousands of years. That's precisely the problem, Foster's voice replied, now coming through their internal communications. You built walls and assumed they would stand forever. Humanity learned to become the flood that finds every crack, every weakness. We had to evolve beyond static defenses because our very survival demanded it. The Hyperion's next transformation was perhaps the most spectacular yet. Its entire structure seemed to dissolve into a cloud of silvery particles, each one a self-contained nanomachine capable of independent action. The cloud enveloped several hegemony vessels, bypassing their shields completely. What you're witnessing, Foster explained, her voice now eerily present throughout the hegemony fleet, is the culmination of centuries of human innovation. We call it the Gray Storm, a swarm of quantum-linked nanites that can disassemble and reassemble matter at will. Kylax watched in horror as sections of his fleet's ships began to simply disappear, the nanites breaking down their structure at the molecular level. The process wasn't destructive. It was precise, surgical, and completely unstoppable by any conventional means. The storm could reduce your entire fleet to its component atoms, Foster continued. Instead, it's merely disabling your weapons and propulsion systems. Consider this a demonstration of both our capabilities and our restraint. The Hyperion reformed from its nanite cloud, but now it was different, larger, more imposing, its hull incorporating elements of the material it had absorbed from the hegemony ships. It had learned from them, adapted their technology, and improved upon it in minutes. This is your final opportunity, Grand Marshal, Foster declared. The next phase of this engagement will not be a demonstration. Humanity has walked the path of war for millennia, and we've learned to excel at it. Don't force us to show you just how far we've come. In the silence that followed, the fate of the hegemony fleet hung in the balance, and the true lesson of humanity's power began to sink in. It wasn't just their technology that made them formidable. It was their relentless drive to adapt, improve, and overcome any obstacle in their path. Grand Marshal Kylax stood amidst the chaos of his flagship's bridge, his proud bearing finally broken by the reality of his situation. The tactical displays told a story that would have been unthinkable mere hours ago. Half his fleet disabled, the other half trapped in normal space by technology he couldn't comprehend. But pride, especially pride built over millennia of dominance, dies hard. All remaining combat-capable ships, he broadcast, his voice carrying the weight of a civilization that had never known true defeat. Execute Protocol Omega. Authorization. Kylax Prime. On the Hyperion's bridge, Captain Foster's eyes narrowed as new energy signatures bloomed across her tactical display. Analysis, she commanded. Commander Chen's fingers flew across his console. They're initiating some kind of cascade reaction in their power cores, Captain. Energy readings are off the scale. It appears they're converting their entire ships into weapons. Foster nodded grimly. So this is their final gambit. The death throes of an empire that would rather destroy itself than adapt. She opened a channel to the hegemony fleet. Grand Marshal, the energy signatures we're detecting suggest you're preparing for a suicide attack. Reconsider. There's no need for this level of sacrifice. Kylax's laugh was hollow. You've proven your point about humanity's capabilities, Captain, but you've overlooked one crucial detail. The hegemony does not surrender. We do not bend. If we cannot rule, we will ensure that our defeat becomes legend. The remaining hegemony ships began to glow with unnatural energy, their reactor cores pushing far beyond safety limits. The combined detonation would create an explosion massive enough to destroy everything within several light minutes, including their own disabled ships. Time to detonation, Foster asked quietly. 2 minutes, Captain, Chen replied. Even with our quantum shields at maximum, a blast of that magnitude. Foster cut him off with a raised hand. Deploy the chronosphere. The command crew moved with practiced efficiency, but there was a new tension in their movements. The chronosphere was more than just another weapon. It was humanity's ultimate expression of their mastery over space-time itself. The Hyperion's hull began to ripple again, but this time the transformation was different. Instead of weapons or defensive systems, the ship's metamorphic structure began generating a complex array of temporal manipulators. The space around the vessel started to distort visibly, light bending in impossible ways. Chronosphere deployment at 30%, the AI announced. Temporal field stabilizing. On the Hegemony flagship, Kylax watched in confusion as strange readings began appearing on his sensors. What are they doing now? He demanded. His science officer's voice was barely a whisper. Sir, they're manipulating time itself. The chronosphere's effect spread outward from the Hyperion like ripples in a pond, but these ripples moved through time rather than space. As they reached each hegemony vessel, the ships seemed to slow down, their reactor cascades stretching out longer and longer until they nearly froze. Temporal field at full strength, the AI reported. Local space-time dilation achieved. Relative time flow within the field is now at 1/10,000th normal speed. Foster opened a channel to Kylax one final time. Grand Marshal, your ships are now caught in a temporal bubble. For every second that passes for us, less than a millisecond passes for you. Your reactor detonations will still occur, but so slowly that we can safely disarm them one by one. The Hyperion began to move through the battlefield like a surgeon moving between patients. The gray storm deployed again, but this time with even more precision, systematically disassembling the overloading reactors while leaving the rest of each ship intact. This is what you fail to understand about humanity, Foster continued, her voice carrying to all ships in the fleet. We don't just develop technology. We master it, bend it to our will in ways its original creators never imagined. We took the basic laws of physics and learned to treat them as guidelines rather than rules. One by one, the hegemony ships were neutered, their destruction averted not through brute force, but through humanity's ultimate weapon, their endless capacity for innovation and adaptation. The chronosphere will dissolve in exactly 10 minutes, Foster announced. When it does, you'll find your ships intact but completely disarmed. Your crews will survive, not because we couldn't destroy them, but because we chose not to. Remember this day, Grand Marshal. Remember what happened when you pushed humanity to reveal its true strength. In the time-frozen space between moments, the galaxy's balance of power shifted irrevocably. The hegemony's might, built over thousands of years of unchallenged dominance, was being dismantled not by a superior force, but by a species that had simply never stopped evolving, never stopped pushing the boundaries of what was possible. And as Captain Foster watched the final reactor core being safely neutralized, she knew that this encounter would reshape more than just military doctrine. It would force the galaxy's older civilizations to confront an uncomfortable truth. That true power lay not in the strength you possessed, but in the strength you had the wisdom to hide until it was truly needed. The chronosphere's temporal field dissolved exactly as promised, reality snapping back to normal time like a rubber band released from tension. The hegemony fleet hung motionless in space, their mighty ships now little more than elaborate containers for their surviving crews. Grand Marshal Kylax stood in silence, his ceremonial armor dulled and his pride in tatters. The tactical displays showed what he had refused to accept until this moment: total defeat. Not a single weapon remained operational across his entire fleet. Even the flagship's most basic defensive systems had been systematically neutralized. "Open a channel to the Hyperion," he commanded, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of tradition about to be broken. "Full broadcast, all frequencies." Captain Foster's image appeared on the main screen, her expression neither triumphant nor gloating, simply attentive. Kylax drew himself up to his full height, his secondary appendages held rigid in formal pose. "Captain Foster," he began, the words feeling alien in his mouth, "the hegemony requests terms." Foster nodded once, acknowledging the monumental nature of this moment. "Your crews will be allowed to return home, Grand Marshal. Your ships, once we verify they're completely neutralized, will be returned as well, though I suspect your engineers will find them educational. We've left the basic technology intact, but removed anything that could be immediately repurposed for military use." "You could have destroyed us utterly," Kylax observed, a question hidden in the statement. "We could have," Foster agreed. "But humanity learned long ago that true victory isn't about destruction. It's about understanding. Your civilization has much to offer the galaxy, Grand Marshal. Your art, your culture, your history. These are treasures that shouldn't be lost because of military pride." A low murmur ran through the Hegemony bridge crew. This was not the response their training had prepared them for. Mercy from a position of total dominance was a concept foreign to their military doctrine. "And what does humanity want in return?" Kylax asked, wariness evident in his tone. Foster's slight smile carried centuries of human diplomatic experience. "A seat at the table, Grand Marshal. Equal standing in galactic affairs. Recognition that Earth and its colonies are not some upstart civilization to be dismissed or conquered, but partners in the greater journey of all sentient species." She paused, letting her next words carry their full weight. "And a recognition that strength comes in many forms. The hegemony has ruled through visible power for millennia. Humanity chose a different path. We hid our capabilities not out of fear, but because we understood that true power lies in knowing when not to use it." The Hyperion's hull shifted one final time, its appearance returning to that of a simple research vessel. The transformation seemed to underscore Foster's words, a visible reminder that appearances could be deceiving. "Your engineers will want to study our technology," Foster continued. "We're prepared to share some of it, under controlled conditions. Not weapons, but the fundamental advances in materials science, quantum mechanics, and temporal physics that made them possible. Consider it a gesture of good faith." Kylax's primary eyes blinked in succession, a sign of deep thought in his species. "And if we refuse these terms? If the hegemony chooses to respond with..." "With what?" Foster interrupted gently. "Grand Marshal, what you've seen today wasn't our full capability. The Hyperion is a mid-range explorer, not a warship. Consider that carefully before you finish that thought." The implications hung in space between them. If a single research vessel could neutralize an entire battle fleet, what could humanity's actual warships do? "The terms are accepted," Kylax declared finally. "The hegemony recognizes Earth and its territories as equals." The last word seemed to physically pain him, but he forced it out. Foster nodded. "Excellent. Commander Chen will transmit coordinates for a diplomatic rendezvous. I suggest we both send word to our respective governments. This marks the beginning of a new era in galactic relations." As the transmission ended, Foster turned to her crew. "Stand down from combat stations. Begin power-down procedures for all advanced systems, and send a priority message to Earth Command. Operation Revelation complete. The galaxy is ready for dialogue." In the vast darkness of space, the Hyperion resumed its patrol route, once again appearing as nothing more than a humble research vessel. But now its very presence carried a new message to all who saw it. that humanity's greatest strength lay not in the power they wielded, but in the wisdom with which they wielded it. And in the centuries to come, the galaxy would learn that this first revelation of humanity's true nature was just the beginning. The species that had learned to hide its strength had much more to teach about the true meaning of power, progress, and peace. The age of assumption was over. The age of understanding had begun.